Welcome to JRI. Quick disclaimer as always, right? This is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors. You have to make your own decisions. Full disclaimer in the notes below. I have with me, though, Greg Beischer, President and CEO of Alaska Energy Metals, joining me. Greg, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Matt. Nice, clear, cool fall day here in Anchorage, Alaska.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, never a better day to be inside than I guess. So you're here though to talk about your new company or your newly refocused company. So why don't we just get going here right off the bat? Just super simple question to start off, right? As always, your classic elevator pitch. Do you want to run us through your elevator pitch for us?
Sure thing. Well, our main focus is the Nikolai project in central Alaska, where from historical drilling, it looks like there should be a very large deposit of nickel with accessory cobalt, copper, chrome, and platinum group elements. And I've known about the project a long time, and I've decided that our company will focus on this project, and we're drilling off. We've done the drilling this summer and should be in a position to announce our first resource quite soon. And I think it's going to open some eyes. People are going to realize this could be a really large accumulation of nickel metal.
hmm And I think that if you're listening to this, you probably understand the bull thesis for nickel. So we'll sidestep that conversation for now. I'll provide a link to some literature if people want to know more. But I mean, nickel. If you do follow me, you know I'm a big nickel bull. But Greg, why don't we, before we kind of get into the more nitty gritty detailed questions, let's just kind of finish off this boilerplate style content. Do you mind just bringing up your slide deck and I might ask this for you to have a couple of just some basic questions off that.
Sure.
Yeah, perfect. We can see it now, so we're good. So why don't you, as you navigate there, I'll ask the question, but just talk us through. So, this is not a new company; it's renamed and refocused. So, but you just want to talk through. You just with the new branding, with the new project, you've done a rollback now. Do you want to talk us through the share structure as it exists right now?
Sure. There's only about 51 million shares outstanding at the moment, and so that gives us a market cap of around 27 million.
And then what about warrants, overhang, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't view this as much of an overhang here. There's 13 million, almost 14 million warrants out at the moment. And we did raise this money, 9.5 million, over the course of the summer. So that stock actually will only become free trading at the end of November. And then these warrants will have, another 18 months or 20 months to run. But they're at 80 cents. And so, and I actually think that our share price will be over 80 cents within the next 18 months, and we'll probably get those warrants exercised.
Hmm. And what about insider ownership then?
Yeah, a good chunk is owned by management and directors, but a lot of it is owned by the folks who participated in the most recent financings since we refocused the company last March. And it's a great capital markets group. These are influential investors that know what they're investing in. And I think they're going to be very, very solid shareholders for our company. Many of them were the initial investors in Canada Nickel. And I think they see that Alaska Energy will be able to reproduce the success that Canada Nickel has had.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're following a similar vein or tenor as other projects that have found success doing very similar things, similar size, similar grade, which we'll get to, right? Let's talk about burn rate quick, right? So what's your G&A, non-drilling burn rate? What is that for you guys monthly?
Oh yeah, that's typically in the order of 800 to a million Canadian dollars per year. And so, we run a pretty tight ship when it comes to the overhead. But most of our money is going in the ground for exploration.
And so, yeah, what is it, how much money? Why don't you talk us through very briefly just the drilling that you've accomplished so far? Not we won't we'll talk about the future in a second, but what about this thus far in your story?
Yeah, well, since reforming in March, we've raised a total of 12.5 million Canadian dollars. You know, Alaska is not cheap. We lose 25 or 30% right off the bat on the currency exchange rates. And right now we're using helicopter supported drilling. So we go through that money pretty quickly, typically around $1 million a month while we're operating. We've finished drilling now, so costs are slowing down. But we've got enough cash in the treasury to see us through until the first major milestone for the company, which will be the first maiden resource by next
So,
March.
okay, yeah, thank you. So, I mean, just as a follow-up question, I mean, are there opportunities to reduce, like you say, like helicopter-supported drilling? That helicopter can get awfully expensive, awfully pricey. I mean, are there opportunities for like a tracked vehicle or a camp or something? I mean, are there opportunities to reduce those costs?
Yeah, there sure is. It'll take a little while, but I can show you a picture here. So here's the Richardson Highway. It's a paved highway. Here's the main claim block where we have our zone of mineralization. And there is an established gravel road that comes very close to the claim block and could pretty readily be extended. That would take some permitting work to do in advance. There's a river crossing here that right now is just a ford. It would need a bridge, and this road would need some improvements to get big heavy equipment across it with tractor trailers. But it's definitely something that could be done in the future. But for at least next summer, we'll still continue with helicopter support. It's the best way for now.
Yeah, fair. I mean, yeah, this is not it's not the Timmins nickel camp, right? It's not the Timmins camp. This is yeah, Alaska. Yeah. So just last one here, and these kind of the machine gun kind of questions here at the start. Outstanding debt. Do you have any outstanding debt?
No, no, there's no debt. No.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, let's just transition a bit, kind of from those fairly simple standard questions, and start trying to get into the meat of it here, right? You've been CEO of what was originally Millrock Resources. Millrock was since 2007. Recently, you've changed your tenor, changed your strategy, your approach, and you've kind of rebuilt and rebranded yourself as Alaska Energy Metals. Originally, my understanding is that Millrock was a project generator, right? So, I mean, I guess maybe the question I want to ask you to start out with is, I mean, what made you switch strategies? How did that conversation begin?
Yeah, well, this is a compelling project, and at first we stuck to our model, looked for joint venture partners to earn into it. We got a couple of offers that we didn't find met our expectations, and we were realizing more and more, we could do this one all ourselves. It's that compelling a project. We think we can definitely raise the money for it. And it's sort of like this is the one we'd been waiting 15 years for as a generator.
Yeah, so then, so I guess the a natural follow-up question was, is this a matter of you, this was more so that you finally had that elusive, beautiful project fall into your lap that you wanted to go solo on? It wasn't necessarily that you were looking to, macro thesis about, green energy or about nickel or graphite or copper or something, but more so that you had a project come across your plate that you just thought was too good to give up like that?
Yeah, it was a combination of events, though. It seemed like interest in the project generator approach to mineral exploration was waning in a generally bad metals market. Our share price had been slipping and slipping, despite the fact that we were still executing our chosen business model very, very well. But the investor interest just wasn't there, and it just felt like we've got to change things up for the benefit of our shareholders. So that's what we did, and it just was an opportune time. Part of it was my knowledge of this particular project because I've known about it for a long time, and my knowledge of nickel, and the timing and history of our predecessor company, Millrock.
hmm No, that was a question or a topic that I was considering having too. Is that yeah, this, the project generator model just seems to be not getting any love whatsoever right now the last few years, right? So yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
So
I could comment on that. I mean, it's tough. I still absolutely believe in that business approach to mineral exploration. It makes for a sustainable, or at least semi-sustainable company, and therefore you can keep a geologic exploration team together over the long haul, which is exactly what it takes to make discoveries. In the case of Millrock, we hadn't made that great big discovery that we could monetize and make a fully sustainable company, like, for example, EMX or royalties or Altius Minerals. I mean, those companies made discoveries, monetized it, and became essentially royalty companies. But I also look to companies like Riverside or Eagle Plains, and those guys have done a fantastic job of keeping a very tight share structure and essentially self-financing their exploration work. And over the long haul, if they keep doing excellent exploration work, they should make big discoveries that will reward shareholders. But it takes a long time, especially in the earliest grassroots phases of exploration. So I'm a big believer in the model, but for us, it was time to make a change and to laser focus on this project, which was a great opportunity.
And I mean the Nikolai project. I mean that Eureka that you have. It is awfully interesting. We'll get to that. And I think maybe a good segue is just to discuss, as you referenced yourself previously, you do have, this is always something that I like to look for and something I always enjoy as an investor, even just as someone who finds this sector interesting to research. But I mean, you have huge personal history on this land package, right? I mean, you've spent the better part of your life at this point, decades, on it, learning, researching, exploring. Do you just kind of provide some color there and explain that?
Sure. Yep. Yeah. This is the project that brought me to Alaska in 1995. My first career as a young geologist was with INCO, and they had moved me all around North America, and I learned a lot. But they moved me here to be exploration manager and to focus on this project, which the global targeting team had identified as having similar geologic and geochemical characteristics to the Norilsk area of Russia, which of course is probably the largest accumulation of nickel sulfide deposits on Earth, something that INCO would have loved to find, and they sent me up here to find that. And so for 5 years in the late 90s, myself and a team here in Alaska and teams from Sudbury, Ontario, explored this ground, and we didn't find massive sulfides. We did find a lot of disseminated nickel, but at the time it wouldn't have cut it economically, and eventually the project lapsed and or was really bought up by another junior company that became Pure Nickel. And Pure Nickel did over a decade of work in the early 2000s in joint venture, first with Anglo American and then with Itochu. They did really good work, spent a lot of money, but didn't find the big massive sulfide prize either. But they did extend out this Eureka zone, this disseminated zone of sulfide mineralization. But eventually the markets turned bad, nickel price was bad, and they dropped the claims. And I saw the claims come open in around 2018. Didn't move immediately on it, but after a while I saw that these lower grade disseminated sulfide deposits really might be the next generation of nickel deposits that our industry has to mine to meet what appears to be a surging demand. So we jumped on it, and and so it was kind of full circle for me. The project that brought me to Alaska, I'm on it again, and the intervening 25 years, I've explored all over this great state as Millrock Resources. And I'm glad to have this back, though. I love nickel geology and magmatic geology, and I really like the idea of finding a deposit that can make a difference, not just to Alaska, but really to the United States on its new change and new direction on powering vehicles.
And that the United States topic there. I mean, it is important to realize. I mean, I'm a Canadian, and a lot of Canadian people are listening to this, obviously, and there are, I mean, Canada Nickel, FPX, Giga, right? There's lots of Canadian large, low grade bulk tonnage projects, but like you say, the United States soil. Maybe not necessarily as readily available, right? And so I think that there is, even though Canada's tier one jurisdiction, there are still jurisdictional advantages to be on American soil versus Canadian, I think. And I think that's kind of a valid detail to bring up for this. I wanted to talk about just the pure nickel, now galleon gold. I'm sure some people recognize that name, right? They own this project for a decade or more. I guess maybe I want to just explore that concept a bit, because I do agree with you. And again, this is a part of my own personal investment thesis that nickel. I mean, these projects that like yours almost have to be mined, right? And I think we're going to see just how, like I always say, like Copper Mountain, 0.2% copper porphyry, proving that they can make an economic go of it, and kind of proving detractors about what a low grade porphyry system is capable of. So too, similarly here now with nickel, these low grade bulk tonnage nickel projects, I think that you just have to see the sea change coming. I'll stop talking, or I'll take a breath here, but just maybe let's talk about like what kind of work did Pure Nickel do on this project? I guess like, easy question to start out with. Like, how many meters did they drill?
Yeah, it was tens of thousands. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. Their project encompassed this entire area, larger area than we presently have claimed, but it's roughly $30 million US of exploration work that was carried out in the from 2000 to 2012. And like I said, they had quite deep budgets because of their major company partners at the time.
Yeah. So did they ever? I mean, this is maybe my own. I was trying to do my due diligence here and jumping on Cedar Plus. I don't know if you've been on that new website yet, but it's been a learning curve for me a little bit. But did they ever publish an actual resource or publish an economic study on it?
No, they didn't. The concentration of metal when I worked on the project in the 90s, first time, and when they worked on it, wasn't high enough to really consider that it could be a resource or a deposit. So they didn't. I know they started to think about it, but by then the bottom had fallen out of the nickel market. Tochu had withdrawn as a joint venture partner, and then Pure Nickel sort of just faded away before they actually could calculate a resource. But I know they were thinking about doing that just as things were closing in on them, but it never happened.
And I guess, I mean, their loss is your gain here. You did reference, I mean, $30 million worth of data. You and I chatted prior to this, and you referenced that this is something you purchased for awfully cheap, right? I mean, do you want to explain maybe just like the terms of that purchase, and then also just, what sort of above and below ground data did that include for you?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, the project at the time encompassed all this area, and so there's airborne geophysical surveys, multiple different types, ground geophysics, geologic mapping, 5 or 6 thousand soil samples, just a treasure trove of information, and even environmental studies and compilations, some economic studies, and tens of thousands of meters of drilling. And specific to what we now own, there's at least 8 or 10,000 meters of drilling right on our property that was historically done, which we can now use to great advantage. We've got all the logs, the assays, and photos of the core and the drill core itself. So yeah, it was a great buy, and it's going to accelerate our work tremendously.
Hmm. And it was relatively cheap too. It was like $1 million and some shares. Is that what it was?
Yeah, pennies on the dollar of the cost to create it at the time, never mind the cost to create it today.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to get into the resource size here, but I think that especially it's just I like to know where we are above ground. And so, like, data acquisition, data layering, right? All BHEM or VTEM, and all the rest. Do you have enough of that? I mean, because this is not like you're going through historical data from the '70s or something. This is modern exploration being done on it. I mean, do you have the above ground data you need right now, or is there always more to happen?
We did. We had a pretty strong geophysical component to our exploration work this past summer using a survey type called CSAMT, which we've liked a lot and used to excellent effect on other exploration projects. So we did do that this year. We might do more of it next year, but at this point, it's really a drilling project.
Hmm. Well, then, like, let's get to that, right? I mean, you are, like you say, you're already midway through some very aggressive drilling. Maybe I'll just have you talk about that. I do want to talk about the resource size, the size of the prize here. But I mean, do you just want to talk through what you've done? Like you say, you've already have one phase of your drilling complete, but I also know that within a few months you're going to be going again on a very aggressive plan here for drilling. Do you just kind of want to talk us through your drill program once more?
Sure thing. So you can see my slide now with this
Yes. Yep.
yellow band of mineralized zone. And so you can see the scale of kilometers. So I'm showing about 7 kilometers of trend identified by historical holes shown as the black dots, which, as I mentioned, we've just purchased this data. We have the assays and logs now and can use these. And so I'm showing 7 kilometers, but really the zone of mineralization seems to persist for close to 12 kilometers. This is sparse drilling. I mean, there's a kilometer between those holes, yet every hole, every historical drill hole got very close to this average grade of 0.35% nickel equivalent. It's about a quarter of a percent nickel plus the value of copper, cobalt, platinum, and palladium, and even a bit of gold. There's no misses. Any historical drill hole that went through this zone got about the same mineralization. And now, this past summer, we've drilled the holes shown in blue, and that's going to allow us to calculate a tonnage of rock shaded in red there with a specific amount of contained metal and an inferred level resource as a result of this drilling.
Uh,
Maybe show you this slide.
yeah.
And so here's two of the historical drill holes, actually, that my crews drilled back in 1997. And what we discovered at the time was that there was a high-grade core, shown in the pink color, with an envelope on both sides that was around 0.32 or 0.35, 0.42 to 0.47 in the core. And then it comes right up to surface. This is the Earth's surface here, and dipping nicely at 45 degrees to the south, so a good configuration. So, but you can see it's thick. On this section, it's in excess of around 275 meters thick. Recent drilling that we did indicates in our holes that it's even thicker than that, and consistent homogeneous mineralization over this entire strike length.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about drilling because, yeah, I mean, you've got more coming in 2024, right? And I do want, maybe this is a time for us to sidestep and just discuss, the size of the prize. I mean, there's some information on the screen there, but I mean, maybe I'll use some oil terminology here for you, but P10, P50, P90 style confidence intervals. I mean, what is your expected range of outcomes? I mean, when we talk, I mean, the numbers get large very quickly here. Do you just want to kind of discuss the outer bounds of probabilities, or maybe kind of what you're calling your shot at?
Sure. I mean, it's like I say, this is an amazingly homogeneous body of mineralization, very unusual for geology. Usually, geology is anything but homogeneous. It changes rapidly from place to place, but not in this case, it seems. And so I think there's a strong likelihood that our new drilling will confirm this historical average grade of 0.35% nickel. And if it does, we've roughly calculated that there would be between 1.3 and 1.7 billion pounds of nickel contained within this red shaded areas, with the other metals to go along with it, having a notional value of about $25 billion worth of metal in situ in the ground. I can't say that this is a deposit yet. I'm not saying that it is, but what I am saying that is, if that historical grade holds up, then we should have somewhere in that range of an inferred resource.
And that's just within that red circle, that red grouping.
That's correct.
Yeah, and so I mean, people can start to maybe put the pieces together here that it could be a heck of a lot larger than that too, right? I mean, I think I wanted to return to that uniformity or conformity of your geology. And again, this is maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves, but when you look down the road to things like a processing flow sheet, that's going to help the economics presumably, because it's going to be remain fairly simple and uniform across this potential deposit. Yeah, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, that's what big mining companies love, is a multi-decade mine life projected with a consistent concentration of metal in the ground that they can rely on. Multi-decade mines typically result in two or three metal price spikes, which of course is where a mining company will make most of its money. Things can plug along for years and years, break even, make a little bit, lose a little bit, but those price spikes are what a mining company lives for. And great big deposits like copper porphyries are very attractive to large mining companies. And to me, so should a large bulk tonnage nickel deposit.
Mm-hmm. Man, just one more question. You're kind of almost returning to the historical data. Is there network that kind of gives you a ballpark sense of recovery rate on this?
There is. It's early days, and we're going to have a lot of work to do in the coming couple of years. That work is going to start right now. But we do know from the testing that we've done and that Pure Nickel has done on composite samples from historical drill hole, you can see on this chart here that the red bar indicates that 92% of the nickel was in the form of the nickel sulfide mineral pentlandite, which is common nickel sulfide and readily recoverable by standard methods. So we know we've got a lot of the nickel in a form that's recoverable, potentially recoverable, but now we've got to do the testing to see what we'd actually get in a processing plant.
Yeah, and I mean, even that's huge, right? These details. I mean, there's nothing trapped in silicates you're not going to be able to get out. I mean, yeah, just a very, very simple pentlandite. I mean, that is just very standard processing. So nothing too boutique or nothing too fancy, I guess, to try to get out of the ground and get it into ore or into concentrate, right?
That's right.
Why don't you? How does the size then compare? And I think you've got a slide in here in your slide deck on this. I mean, there are lots of companies out there now already that have this approach, right? This large bulk tonnage. Do you want to just give us a quick comparison to what you would consider your peer group?
Sure. Maybe I'll just pause here, though, Matt, and just show you this. So, because you'd queried about the historical data, and you also were asking about the hole spacing that we're using to establish the initial resource. And we were actually surprised pleasantly. We hired Stantec, large independent third-party mining firm consultancy to calculate the resource for us once we provided the drill information. And they studied and said that we could drill it at 300-meter centers, a 300-meter grid pattern for the drill holes to establish an inferred resource. We didn't think it would be that we could space the holes that far apart, so it was a good surprise. And that's what we've done, drilled our holes 300 meters apart. But if one looks at these two circles, there's a couple of clusters of historical drill holes that fall within 300 meters of each other. And so we're looking at that data right now as we speak to see if we wouldn't be able to calculate an inferred resource here and another one here sooner than next March, and that's a possibility. I can't say for sure that's going to happen, but we're looking at those numbers right now. If true, I mean, those two resources are about 3 kilometers apart, and there's enough historical holes that we know consistently hit the same mineralization over substantial thicknesses, and it should become pretty clear that these will join up. And where we have overlap with our recent drilling, we'd probably upgrade to a higher confidence level of an indicated resource in that particular overlap area.
Good. I mean, well, let's chase this rabbit instead. I like this vein of conversation here. I mean, the hole spacing. I mean, 300 meters from a third party. Obviously, that's quite a substantial gap. So I mean, again, but with Stantec saying that, I think that's it does. It speaks to consistency and predictability of the geological model and what we know about it, right? But I guess maybe the question I have about inferred. I mean, yeah, you mentioned that you are almost like you say in your red patch there, where you've actually drilled out closer, maybe perhaps to M&I. Uh, I guess this is a question maybe around macro market conditions right now, but I mean it just seems to me that sometimes inferred resources don't get a lot of love, right? That people are looking to get more economic study quality ounces before we start to see the respect that maybe we feel like projects are due, right? I mean, do you just want to speak about that? I mean, like, where are you hanging your hat that you think that you can get a re-rating based on inferred ounces alone? Or is this more that inferred is just to get your name on the map and hopefully start to see value creation as we get to M&I? Or just do you just want to just touch on that topic in general?
Yeah, sure. Well, you have to work your way up, and so the first step is to get an inferred resource. And no, you can't realistically attach a dollar value to those pounds of nickel in the ground, but you can start to, and then as you drill at closer spacings, there's greater confidence, and then you can actually start to put a dollar value on it. But like I say, this is the first drill program. We're going to produce a resource that is likely to capture attention, and I think it will result in a re-rating of our share price.
Did you get a sense of from Stantec about spacing to get to indicated?
Uh, I don't have the answer to that question at my fingertips, but I would assume it's somewhere around half of 300 meters,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in the 150-meter area.
Which is still, yeah, I mean, knowing, yeah, it's just your educated guess, but that's still fairly generous in terms of spacing, right? So I mean, you're not far off. This is not something where you have to be doing 25-meter grid to get there.
No,
You're not far off from that. So that's, I mean,
no.
people,
The
yeah,
consistency and the homogeneity of the mineralization makes that possible. You know a lot about gold as well. I mean, sometimes you are drilling in these things off at 10 or 12-meter intervals, but no, we'll never have to do anything like that.
yeah, perfect. And so, do you want to? I think you also have because the 2023. I mean, when you talk about your 1.5 billion pounds of nickel already, that's just from this. Do you want to? I think you have a slide deck or one on your slide deck pointing forward to 2024. Yeah. So you just want to talk us through this as well. I mean, this is like you say, 18 months. This is a very action-filled 18 months for Alaska Energy coming up. Do you just want to talk us through kind of the next stage of your plan?
Right. And so this plan is changing, actually. We drilled the holes shown in blue this summer. We were planning to drill the holes in gold or yellow next year to more or less double the amount of nickel in the ground, probably. But now we're getting good traction and interest in this project. We see the potential to raise substantially more capital. And so now we're thinking that we'd be more aggressive with 3 or 4 drill program and extend the zone at 300-meter grid drill pattern all the way up here so that we'd have this much material blocked out at that point. What we guesstimate right now, if we were to drill all the blue and the yellow holes, is that we'd have somewhere in the 2 to 3 billion pound range. Again, assuming that this historical grade holds up. I think it will, because every single historical hole got a very similar grade. I can't say that it's a deposit even yet, but it could be a really big deposit.
Hmm. Well, and what I like, about your story is that this is an aggressive project, right? I mean, you were batting for singles to get on base. I mean, you're at 25. I was just making sure, looking it up today. You're 25, 26 million Canadian market cap, and yeah, you're talking about like 10, 20,000 meter programs over the next 12, 18 months. You're talking about multiple drill rigs, and so this is not something where people are going to have to wait 5 years to see this story evolve. That, I mean, you are hitting the ground, sprinting, to butcher a phrase.
Yeah, and the project deserves that kind of approach. It's not a go slow thing. America needs nickel. That much is very clear, and we've got it, but we've got to prove it too. Have a quite high confidence level that is there based on this historic drilling, but we've got to drill it off at 300 meters to be able to say that with geologic confidence and in keeping with the 43-101 regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Matt,
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry, you asked about comparisons to other companies. I'll jump there now if you want.
sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there are other companies working on similar, I would call them bulk tonnage, disseminated sulfide nickel deposits. And Canada Nickel is one in particular that I like and that we're following closely. So there's a lot on this slide. The black dot is the concentration of metal in each deposit. And even though I think of our prospect as relatively low grade, it actually compared to the peers is not bad at all. The blue or the green bar indicates total contained metal, and blue indicates contained nickel metal. Again, this is a projection in the future. We don't have this yet. We're going to have, this is what I suspect that we're going to have in terms of tonnage or pounds of nickel in the ground 18 months from now, with the potential to be much larger. But even 18 months of work gets us in the same ballpark as our peers, which are probably 3 years ahead of us. And Canada Nickel measures their market cap well over $100 million, as does FPX, and we're sitting at 27, ready to get our first mark on the graph with what we hope is a deposit around this size. So I think there is potential for stock re-rating on that basis. For me, it's been great to see Anglo American invest in Canada Nickel, a great endorsement of the company and the team there and the deposit. But more so for me, it was an endorsement of the overall notion that our industry, mining industry, will be mining deposits that are around 0.25% nickel. These companies, Anglo, Glencore, Jogmec, they've seen the future and know that to meet the coming demand, the only way the industry will be able to step up and mine enough nickel, discover enough nickel, is to pursue these disseminated sulfide nickel deposits.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, you can't, the macro thesis is an inescapable part of this discussion, right? I absolutely agree. And like you say, having majors starting to buy in. I mean, you can look at car manufacturers, you can look at OEMs, you can look at mining majors that are, they think in terms of like decades and generations, right? And so they're obviously, where they see the world is pointing includes, that reality includes projects like AMC, like the Nikolai project, being economic, right? It has to for us to meet our goals, right? So I mean, maybe that's actually a good transition here too, because like kind of the one fly in the soup with these large low grade projects is that, yeah, they are sensitive to price of nickel, and sometimes like the boilerplate headline economic numbers, NPV and stuff, and I mean NPV obviously always gets undercounted or undervalued on these large projects. But uh, that is sometimes what you can see as the weakness is that your headline economics sometimes are a little, not as good as you would expect from other projects. Obviously, the size of it makes it that way. But what I kind of like, and my point is where I'm going with this is that you are trying to find a solution to that, right? I mean, you've got the Canwell project that's just kind of down the proverbial road or a few kilometers away, where you are hoping to kind of to fix the, or to fix that issue as it is. Do you just want to discuss Canwell briefly with us?
Sure, sure. What, I mean, I know that this company can build out and create value with a very large bulk tonnage disseminated deposit, but in the end, grade really is king. The higher the concentration of metal, the better. And certainly, we haven't discovered all that's being meant to be discovered at the Nikolai project. I mean, I initially targeted the area because there was potential for another deposit or series of deposits like Norilsk, massive sulfide, not disseminated sulfide, rich deposits that have very high concentration of metals. And at surface at the Canwell prospect, in fact, we do see exceptional grades of these metals, enriched also in the platinum group elements and even the more rare platinum group elements like osmium, iridium, ruthenium, and rhodium, which are very valuable. So we'll be definitely trying to discover standalone massive sulfide deposits while we're building value with the disseminated zone. But even if we find modest pods of 1 million or 2 million tons of material like this, it's going to drastically affect in a positive way the economics of the project. So grade is always helpful, and we'll be on the hunt for it. We did a lot of great work on Canwell this summer, so we'll be in a position to drill here next summer as well.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you explained it right. I mean, my point was is that if you're able to find, like you say, a few million tons of 1.5 or 2 more NIEQ, that and you can staple that to the front of your mine plan, that gets payback. That improves payback, improves IRR. I mean, we're kind of nearing the end of it here. I thought maybe one thing during my due diligence process, I look, M&A, interim M&A, annual M&A, and information circulars, et cetera, et cetera. And there's this one thing that I wanted to talk to you about that you and I chatted with beforehand. And, I think it's important because people could read it and maybe raise an eyebrow and it could be of concern. But in the end, it sounds like it's maybe a much ado about nothing or not a critical issue, but there is a lawsuit currently that my understanding is that you're involved in some degree. Can you just provide a little bit of discussion around what that is and I mean the potential impact for you?
No, not really, Matt. I'm not going to comment on ongoing litigation, but I confirm that there is a lawsuit. We're actually a minor secondary player in it, and we really have very little financial risk. It's really an inconsequential item as far as Alaska Energy Metals goes.
Yeah, and I think that that lack of financial risk, if you're comfortable with that, right, then that's the
Yeah.
part that is the critical aspect. Yeah, for sure.
It's concerning a legacy project, nothing to do with Nikolai at all.
No, perfect. Thank you. I think people would be reading that, would be asking similar questions, right? So, why don't we just, I mean, last 5 minutes here, obviously this is going to be a very busy time for you. It already has been a very busy time for you. Can you just maybe do a run through catalysts that potential investors can look forward to over the next 0, 6, 12, 18 months?
Yeah, sure could. We've announced the results from 2 of the 8 drill holes. You saw that at the beginning of last week. The concentration of metals was exactly what we had anticipated it would be, 0.34% nickel and nickel equivalent, but it was over a wider width than we had modeled from historical. It was a 315 meters true width. I mean, it's a truly thick zone of mineralization, at least on the two sections that we drilled. So we'll announce probably two holes at a time as the assay results come out. So maybe over the next 6 weeks, we'll be announcing those results. And then once we have them all in hand, we'll be calculating the resource. And that work will take us until about next March to complete. It's possible we'll announce a resource ahead of that based on the historical drilling that we now have in hand. So lots to look forward to. We have acquired a company in Quebec that has a nickel project and cash. That's being reviewed presently by the TSX Venture Exchange, and if accepted, will be a great complement to Nikolai project. And I'd be glad to be exploring in Quebec again too, because I've spent several years of my career there and in exploring in that particular area too. So lots of announcements, lots of news flow in the coming 6 months.
Yeah, and it is exciting times. I mean, for me, it's a high degree of confidence play, very aggressive path forward, lots of positive catalysts. I mean, to me, it seems like a very, very strong kind of investment opportunity for people looking for nickel exposure. Final thoughts to you, Greg?
I would just say we're going to try and do this right too when it comes to marketing the project. We've got a strong team and a healthy budget for that purpose. And we're going to try and make sure that every brokerage and fund manager knows about this American project that could supply the nickel that the country needs. I know you clearly understand the broader macro picture, but the demand for nickel is still there, stainless steel, but now there's a brand new use. There's 64 pounds or 29 kilos on average in every new electric passenger vehicle. So the demand for nickel is really going to be there, but the United States doesn't produce hardly any nickel. There's one modest mine that exports its product. So the United States imports every pound of nickel that it uses for stainless steel, other nickel uses, and now for batteries. And there's just so much risk for the country and risk to a smooth transition to electric vehicles. The country has to have its own supply of these metals, nickel in particular. Nickel in particular because it's so hard to find in rich concentrations. And there's very few places in the United States geologically where it's even possible to find nickel. And so I think we'll be in a very good position here. It seems clear that this is a prospect that might end up being a very large deposit that could, for decades, meet a good portion of America's needs.
Yeah, well said. And I think you captured it all right. I mean, if you're listening and you want to be in the ground floor of a new large project that's looking to capture the momentum of current geopolitical trends, and I think Alaska Energy Metal Corp AEMC.V would suit your needs well. So yeah, Greg Beischer, CEO and President, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Good talking to you, Matt. Have a
Yeah,
great
have a
day.
good day.